You will wear this dress, and you will be grateful for it." Lady Margaret's voice cut through the morning silence like a sharp blade, as she tossed a crumpled heap of faded, patched fabric onto Lily's bed. Lily looked up from the book she was reading, by the window of her modest attic room in Fairmont, Manor. The dress, if it could even be called that, was a yellowed relic from at least 2 decades past, with frayed lace and stains that even the most dedicated efforts could not completely remove. "Forgive me, stepmother, but there must be some mistake," Lily murmured, gently closing her volume of Byron's poetry. "Lord Pemberton's ball is tonight, and I thought that—" "You thought what?" Margaret arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her lips curving into a cruel smile. "That I would spend a fortune dressing my late husband's bastard as a princess. That I would allow you to outshine my own daughters on the most important night of the social season." Lily's heart sank, but she maintained her composure. At 19, she had learned to hide her emotions behind a mask of serenity. Since her father's death 3 years prior, leaving her in Margaret's care, each day had been a silent battle for dignity. "Of course, I didn't expect such a thing," she replied, her voice steady. "I merely thought that, being the daughter of Lord Fairmont—" "You are a bastard child," Margaret cut in, approaching with measured steps. "Legally recognized, yes, but still the product of a scandal. Your presence at the ball is already a generous concession on my part. Lord Pemberton included your name on the invitation out of courtesy to your father's memory, nothing more." Lily gazed at the tattered dress, understanding with crystal clarity her stepmother's intentions. Margaret intended to publicly humiliate her, ensuring that all of New York's elite witnessed her disgrace. It was a calculated move to eliminate any possibility of Lily securing a good marriage or a respectable social position. "I understand perfectly," Lily said, rising gracefully. "I will wear the dress you have chosen." Margaret blinked, clearly expecting tears or pleas. "Good. I see you finally understand your place." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and no jewelry. It wouldn't be appropriate for someone in your condition." When the door closed, Lily approached the dress. The fabric was rough beneath her fingers, and she could see where moths had left tiny holes. It was worse than her maid's clothing, but as she examined the garment, a strange sense of liberation washed over her. For years, she had tried to please Margaret, hoping to win some affection, or at least tolerance. Now finally the masks had fallen. Her stepmother would never accept her, never give her a chance to truly belong to the family. This public humiliation would be the final blow, the moment her reputation would be shattered beyond repair. But Lily found that, instead of despair, an iron determination was growing in her chest. "Very well," she murmured to herself. "If I must wear this dress, I will wear it with dignity." She spent the rest of the afternoon meticulously preparing herself. She washed her hair with water scented with a few drops of the rose oil she had saved, brushing her golden strands until they shone like silk. She pinched her cheeks and bit her lips to give them natural color. She had no cosmetics or jewels, but she possessed something no adornment could buy: genuine aristocratic bearing, inherited from a lineage that dated back to the first English settlers. When it was time to depart, Lily descended the mansion's main staircase. In the foyer, Margaret awaited with her daughters, Cordelia and Beatrice. The 2 young women wore dazzling gowns of the latest Parisian fashion, with generous necklines adorned by sapphires and diamonds. Their hair was elaborately arranged by a French coiffeur hired especially for the occasion. The contrast was devastating. Beside her half-sisters, Lily looked like a pauper. "Good heavens," Cordelia giggled, covering her mouth with her ivory fan. "Is that how you intend to appear at the ball? People will think you're a lost maid." "Perhaps it would be better if she didn't go," Beatrice suggested with feigned concern. "It would be a humiliation for the entire family." "Nonsense," Margaret interjected, her eyes glinting with malice. Lily insisted so much on attending. It would be cruel to deny her this opportunity to socialize. During the carriage ride to Pemberton Manor, the silence was heavy. Lily sat erect in the seat opposite her family, ignoring the satisfied glances of her half-sisters. Through the window she watched the streets of New York, where the city's most refined society was preparing for the most glamorous night of the season. Lord Pemberton's ball was legendary. Held annually in his magnificent Fifth Avenue mansion, it attracted not only American aristocracy but also visiting European nobles. It was the event where reputations were made or destroyed, where young debutantes secured influential husbands, and where important deals were sealed between dances and glasses of champagne. When the carriage stopped before the illuminated mansion, Lily took a deep breath. Through the enormous windows, she could see couples dancing in gilded ballrooms, ladies' jewels glittering beneath crystal chandeliers. The music of a full orchestra floated through the night, blending with the murmur of elegant conversations. Margaret alighted first, followed by her daughters. Lily was last, ignoring the disdainful look of the footman who helped her from the carriage. He clearly considered her unsuitable for such an environment. In the marble foyer of Pemberton Manor, elegantly dressed guests conversed in small groups. The scent of exotic flowers mingled with the aroma of fine wines and exquisite delicacies. Lily followed her family, conscious of the curious glances that began to follow her. "Lady Margaret," Lord Pemberton greeted, a distinguished middle-aged man with grizzled sideburns. "What a pleasure to receive you. And your charming daughters." His gaze fell upon Lily, and she perceived the exact moment he noticed her unsuitable gown. The confusion in his eyes was swiftly replaced by embarrassment. "And Lady Lily, of course," he added with forced courtesy. "Welcome," Margaret smiled with poisonous sweetness. Lily was so eager to come. You know how young women are. Sometimes they can't contain their enthusiasm. The implication was clear. Lily had insisted on attending, despite being unsuitable for such an event. As they walked towards the main ballroom, Lily realized "You will wear this dress, and you will be grateful for it." Lady Margaret's voice cut through the morning silence like a sharp blade, as she tossed a crumpled heap of faded, patched fabric onto Lily's bed. Lily looked up from the book she was reading, by the window of her modest attic room in Fairmont, Manor. The dress, if it could even be called that, was a yellowed relic from at least 2 decades past, with frayed lace and stains that even the most dedicated efforts could not completely remove. "Forgive me, stepmother, but there must be some mistake," Lily murmured, gently closing her volume of Byron's poetry. "Lord Pemberton's ball is tonight, and I thought that—" "You thought what?" Margaret arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, her lips curving into a cruel smile. "That I would spend a fortune dressing my late husband's bastard as a princess? That I would allow you to outshine my own daughters on the most important night of the social season?" Lily's heart sank, but she maintained her composure. At 19, she had learned to hide her emotions behind a mask of serenity. Since her father's death 3 years prior, leaving her in Margaret's care, each day had been a silent battle for dignity. "Of course, I didn't expect such a thing," she replied, her voice steady. "I merely thought that being the daughter of Lord Fairmont—" "You are a bastard child," Margaret cut in, approaching with measured steps. "Legally recognized, yes, but still the product of a scandal. Your presence at the ball is already a generous concession on my part. Lord Pemberton included your name on the invitation out of courtesy to your father's memory, nothing more." Lily gazed at the tattered dress, understanding with crystal clarity her stepmother's intentions. Margaret intended to publicly humiliate her, ensuring that all of New York's elite witnessed her disgrace. It was a calculated move to eliminate any possibility of Lily securing a good marriage or a respectable social position. "I understand perfectly," Lily said, rising gracefully. "I will wear the dress you have chosen." Margaret blinked, clearly expecting tears or pleas. "Good, I see you finally understand your place." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and no jewelry. It wouldn't be appropriate for someone in your condition." When the door closed, Lily approached the dress. The fabric was rough beneath her fingers, and she could see where moths had left tiny holes. It was worse than her maid's clothing, but as she examined the garment, a strange sense of liberation washed over her. For years, she had tried to please Margaret, hoping to win some affection, or at least tolerance. Now finally the masks had fallen. Her stepmother would never accept her, never give her a chance to truly belong to the family. This public humiliation would be the final blow. The moment her reputation would be shattered beyond repair. But Lily found that, instead of despair, an iron determination was growing in her chest. "Very well," she murmured to herself. "If I must wear this dress, I will wear it with dignity." She spent the rest of the afternoon meticulously preparing herself. She washed her hair with water scented with a few drops of the rose oil she had saved, brushing her golden strands until they shone like silk. She pinched her cheeks and bit her lips to give them natural color. She had no cosmetics or jewels, but she possessed something no adornment could buy: genuine aristocratic bearing, inherited from a lineage that dated back to the first English settlers. When it was time to depart, Lily descended the mansion's main staircase. In the foyer, Margaret awaited with her daughters, Cordelia and Beatrice. The two young women wore dazzling gowns of the latest Parisian fashion, with generous necklines adorned by sapphires and diamonds. Their hair was elaborately arranged by a French coiffeur hired especially for the occasion. The contrast was devastating. Beside her half-sisters, Lily looked like a pauper. "Good heavens," Cordelia giggled, covering her mouth with her ivory fan. "Is that how you intend to appear at the ball? People will think you're a lost maid." "Perhaps it would be better if she didn't go," Beatrice suggested with feigned concern. "It would be a humiliation for the entire family." "Nonsense," Margaret interjected, her eyes glinting with malice. Lily insisted so much on attending, it would be cruel to deny her this opportunity to socialize. During the carriage ride to Pemberton Manor, the silence was heavy. Lily sat erect in the seat opposite her family, ignoring the satisfied glances of her half-sisters. Through the window, she watched the streets of New York, where the city's most refined society was preparing for the most glamorous night of the season. Lord Pemberton's ball was legendary. Held annually in his magnificent Fifth Avenue mansion, it attracted not only American aristocracy, but also visiting European nobles. It was the event where reputations were made or destroyed, where young debutantes secured influential husbands, and where important deals were sealed between dances and glasses of champagne. When the carriage stopped before the illuminated mansion, Lily took a deep breath. Through the enormous windows, she could see couples dancing in gilded ballrooms, ladies' jewels glittering beneath crystal chandeliers. The music of a full orchestra floated through the night, blending with the murmur of elegant conversations. Margaret alighted first, followed by her daughters. Lily was last, ignoring the disdainful look of the footman who helped her from the carriage. He clearly considered her unsuitable for such an environment. In the marble foyer of Pemberton Manor, elegantly dressed guests conversed in small groups. The scent of exotic flowers mingled with the aroma of fine wines and exquisite delicacies. Lily followed her family, conscious of the curious glances that began to follow her. "Lady Margaret," Lord Pemberton greeted, a distinguished middle-aged man with grizzled sideburns. "What a pleasure to receive you. And your charming daughters." His gaze fell upon Lily, and she perceived the exact moment he noticed her unsuitable gown. The confusion in his eyes was swiftly replaced by embarrassment. "And Lady Lily, of course," he added with forced courtesy. "Welcome," Margaret smiled with poisonous sweetness. Lily was so eager to come. You know how young women are. Sometimes they can't contain their enthusiasm. The implication was clear. Lily had insisted on attending, despite being unsuitable for such an event. As they walked towards the main ballroom, Lily realized she had become the center of unwelcome attention. Whispers followed her steps, fans fluttered open to conceal malicious comments, and gazes of pity or disdain accompanied her wherever she went. But she held her head high, her shoulders straight, walking with the natural grace that no adversity had managed to steal from her. If she was destined to be humiliated, it would be with dignity. It was then, the moment she crossed the threshold of the grand ballroom, that her eyes met those of Nicholas Aldridge. Nicholas Aldridge stood by the ballroom windows, observing the throng with the calculating gaze that had made him the wealthiest man in New York at 32 years old. His fortune, built through railroad investments and real estate speculation, was as vast as his reputation for ruthlessness in business. None of the young women present at the ball had managed to spark more than a fleeting interest until that moment. The entrance of the Fairmont family initially caught his attention due to the commotion it caused. Whispers rippled through the crowd like waves, and Nicholas followed the curious glances until his eyes landed on the figure walking behind Lady Margaret and her daughters. The young woman wore a gown that would be considered inappropriate even for a governess, yet she carried herself with a dignity that made the other ladies seem vulgar by comparison. Her golden hair caught the light from the chandeliers, and there was something in her bearing, the way she held her shoulders erect despite the scornful glances, how she ignored the malicious comments without losing her composure. That sparked a genuine interest in Nicholas. "Who is that young woman?" he asked discreetly of his cousin Charles Weatherby, who had approached with 2 glasses of champagne. Charles followed his gaze and raised an eyebrow. "Lady Lily Fairmont, the late Lord William's illegitimate daughter. Legally recognized, but, well, you can see how her stepmother treats her." He lowered his voice conspiratorially. "They say Margaret is determined to publicly ruin her. Apparently, tonight is the final blow." Nicholas watched Lily greet Lord Pemberton with impeccable grace, noting how she maintained her dignity even under the pitying gazes of her hosts. He had known William Fairmont, a man of integrity who had lost his wife in childbirth and found solace in the arms of a young Frenchwoman. Society had condemned the scandal, but William had never denied paternity or failed to provide for his daughter. "Interesting," Nicholas murmured, handing the untouched glass back to his cousin. "If you'll excuse me, Charles." He crossed the ballroom with determined strides, ignoring the beckoning waves and inviting smiles of the marriageable young women who sought to capture his attention. His movements caused a murmur of speculation. Nicholas Aldridge rarely showed interest in any lady, and his fortune made him the most coveted bachelor on the East Coast. Lily had positioned herself discreetly near a marble column, watching the dancers with a serene expression. Her half-sisters had already been requested for the quadrille, surrounded by young gentlemen eager to win the Fairmont fortune's heiresses. Margaret conversed animatedly with other matrons, occasionally casting satisfied glances in Lily's direction, as if savoring in advance the moment of complete humiliation. "Lady Lily," Nicholas said, approaching with a respectful bow. "Allow me to introduce myself, Nicholas Aldridge." Lily looked up, and Nicholas felt an unexpected impact as their gazes met. Her eyes were a deep blue, intelligent and melancholic, but without traces of self-pity. There was strength in them, a silent determination that profoundly intrigued him. "Mr. Aldridge," she replied with an elegant curtsy. "I know your reputation, of course. It is an honor to meet you in person." "The honor is entirely mine," Nicholas countered, discreetly studying her face. She was truly beautiful, with delicate features that revealed her aristocratic lineage. But there was something more, an indefinable quality that set her apart from the other young women present. "I hope you are enjoying the ball." An almost imperceptible smile touched Lily's lips. "As much as possible, considering the circumstances." Her unexpected honesty surprised him. Most ladies would have responded with empty platitudes about how wonderful the evening was. Lily, however, seemed incapable of falsehood, even in her precarious situation. "I understand that your position tonight is challenging," he said carefully, "but allow me to observe that you are enduring such challenges with remarkable grace." "You are too kind," Lily replied, casting her eyes down slightly. "Though I fear your association with me might harm your own reputation. As you can see, I am not exactly socially advantageous company tonight." Nicholas felt a wave of admiration for her candor. She did not attempt to dissimulate her situation or seek his pity. She simply acknowledged reality with admirable dignity. "Lady Lily," he said in a lower voice, inclining slightly, "I can assure you that my reputation can withstand the company of a lady of true quality, regardless of her attire." At that moment, the orchestra struck up a waltz, and Nicholas made a decision that would surprise New York society for years to come. "Would you grant me the honor of this dance?" he asked, extending his gloved hand. Lily looked at him with genuine surprise, and Nicholas perceived that she perfectly understood the implications of his offer. If she accepted, all eyes in the ballroom would turn to them. If she refused, it would be a social slight he would never forget. "Mr. Aldridge," she murmured. "Surely you understand that dancing with me will cause comments." "Let them comment as they please," he replied with growing determination. "Society's opinion rarely influences my business decisions, and it certainly will not influence my social choices." For a moment, Lily hesitated, and Nicholas could see the conflict in her eyes. Finally, with a gesture that revealed extraordinary courage, she placed her gloved hand in his. "It would be an honor, Mr. Aldridge." The murmur that swept through the ballroom as Nicholas led Lily to the center of the dance floor was almost audible. Conversations ceased, fans fluttered furiously, and more than one young lady stared at the scene with expressions of shock and envy. Nicholas placed his hand at Lily's waist, noting how she held herself erect despite the unwanted attention. When the music began and they took the first steps of the waltz, he discovered that she danced with a natural grace that rivaled any lady present. "Where did you learn to dance so magnificently?" he asked as he guided her through the elegant movements. "My father hired dancing masters when I was a child," Lily replied. "He insisted that I receive the education appropriate for a Fairmont daughter, regardless of the circumstances of my birth." Nicholas noticed the subtle pain in her voice as she mentioned her father. He was a man of principles. "I had the privilege of knowing him on a few business occasions." "Indeed." Lily's eyes lit up with genuine interest. He often spoke of his various commercial ventures. He used to say that America's future lay in the hands of visionary men who dared to invest in progress. As they danced, Nicholas noticed how other couples gradually drew back, leaving them more space in the center of the floor. It was both a sign of respect for his social standing and a way to observe them better. He could feel the weight of the gazes, especially Lady Margaret's, whose expression had shifted from malicious satisfaction to growing concern. "Lady Lily," he said as the waltz neared its end, "may I ask you a personal question?" "Certainly," she replied, though a shadow of caution crossed her eyes. "Why did you come tonight, knowing what the consequences would be?" Lily considered the question for a moment as they completed an elegant turn. "Because, Mr. Aldridge, sometimes one must face one's ruin with dignity to discover that perhaps one is not as ruined as imagined." The answer deeply impressed him. There was a wisdom in it that transcended her age, an understanding of human nature that few possessed. Nicholas realized his initial opinion had been superficial. This was not simply a courageous young woman facing adversity. She was a woman of exceptional character, shaped by adversity but not broken by it. When the music ended, Nicholas led her back to the edge of the floor, but did not leave her immediately. Instead, he remained by her side, aware that each moment of his continued attention heightened speculation and diminished the chances of public humiliation Margaret had planned. "Mr. Aldridge," Charles approached, clearly curious about his cousin's intentions. "Would you permit me to be introduced to the charming Lady Lily?" And so, gradually, other gentlemen began to approach, drawn by the attention Nicholas was bestowing upon the young woman. If the wealthiest man in New York considered Lady Lily worthy of his company, perhaps they had underestimated her social value. Margaret observed the scene with growing alarm, understanding that her careful plan was unraveling before her eyes. The following hours unfolded like a dream for Lily. Gentlemen who had never so much as addressed a word to her now vied for her attention, requesting dances and offering refreshments with exaggerated courtesy. The transformation was as sudden as it was disconcerting. Yesterday she was a pariah. Tonight she had inexplicably become a figure of social interest. Nicholas remained nearby, observing the interactions with calculated attention. Every gesture he made was measured to convey a clear message to the society present. Lady Lily Fairmont was under his protection, and any insult directed at her would be considered a personal affront. "Mr. Aldridge," Lily murmured during a pause in the music. When they were momentarily alone, "I must ask, why are you doing this? Surely you understand that I possess no fortune or connections that could benefit you." Nicholas studied her for a moment, admiring her straightforward candor. Perhaps it is precisely that honesty which I find so rare in these circles, he replied. When was the last time someone questioned my motivations instead of simply accepting my attention as a gift from the heavens? A subtle blush colored Lily's cheeks. I fear my upbringing was more geared toward sincerity than social diplomacy. A superior upbringing, I would say, Nicholas countered with a genuine smile. Diplomacy can be learned, but integrity is a rare gift. Across the ballroom, Margaret Fairmont watched the scene with growing agitation. Her careful plans for public humiliation had turned into something entirely unexpected. Cordelia and Beatrice, despite their magnificent gowns and dazzling jewels, were eclipsed by the unusual attention Lily was receiving. "Mamma," Cordelia whispered with ill-concealed irritation. "How did that person manage to capture Nicholas Aldridge's attention? It's incomprehensible." "Silence," Margaret hissed, her eyes fixed on the couple. "It's not over yet. Men like Aldridge often amuse themselves with temporary novelties. Tomorrow, when reality returns, she will still be the ruined bastard she always was." But Margaret underestimated Nicholas's determination. When the orchestra announced the last waltz of the evening, traditionally reserved for engaged couples or those with serious intentions, he made directly for Lily. "Would you grant me this last dance?" "Lady Lily?" he asked, extending his hand with formal solemnity. A murmur swept through the ballroom. The last waltz carried deep social significance, and Nicholas's public request constituted almost a declaration of intent. Lily understood the implications perfectly, her eyes widening slightly. "Mr. Aldridge," she whispered, "surely you are aware of what such a gesture will imply to observers." "Perfectly aware," he confirmed, keeping his hand extended. "The question is, are you willing to accept the consequences of such an association?" Lily looked around the ballroom, seeing expectant faces turned in their direction. Margaret seemed petrified, Cordelia and Beatrice agape with indignation. Lord Pemberton watched with ill-concealed fascination, while other matrons whispered furiously behind their fans. With a movement that required extraordinary courage, Lily placed her hand in Nicholas's. "The consequences of this night were already accepted the moment I stepped into this ballroom," she said, her voice clear enough to be heard by those closest. As they positioned themselves in the center of the floor for the final waltz, the rest of the guests formed a respectful circle around them. It was an honor granted only to the most distinguished couples, and the gesture went unnoticed by no one. "Do you not fear what they will say tomorrow?" Lily asked as they began to dance. "Lady Lily," Nicholas replied, guiding her through the elegant movements, "I built my fortune by ignoring what they would say. If I concerned myself with others' opinions, I would still be a poor young man selling horses in the Albany market." His confession surprised her. "You were not born with a silver spoon?" "Far from it. My father was a blacksmith. My mother washed clothes for wealthy families. Every cent of my fortune was earned through hard work and decisions others considered mad." His eyes met hers. "I learned early on that a person's true quality lies not in their origin, but in their character." Lily felt something stir in her chest, a strange and unsettling sensation she had never experienced. It was not just gratitude for unexpected kindness, but something deeper and more perilous. "Your perspective is singular, as is your courage tonight," Nicholas countered. "How many young women would face such adversity with such dignity?" "You could have remained at home, avoided the planned humiliation. But you chose to come, knowing perfectly well what awaited you. Perhaps it was folly, not courage. Folly would be to passively accept the destiny others chose for you. You chose to write your own story, even knowing it would be difficult." When the music ended, Nicholas did not immediately lead her back to the edge of the floor. Instead, he remained standing, holding her hand slightly longer than protocol demanded. The gesture was noted by all present, generating a fresh wave of speculative whispers. "Lady Lily," he said, loud enough to be heard by a good portion of the guests, "it would be an honor to escort you to your carriage when you are ready to depart." It was another significant gesture. Gentlemen only offered such courtesy to ladies with whom they held serious relationships or close family ties. Nicholas's public offer constituted practically an announcement of romantic interest. Margaret, realizing the situation had entirely escaped her control, approached with her daughters. "Lily," she said in a tense voice, "I believe it is time for us to leave." "Of course, stepmother," Lily replied with serenity. She turned to Nicholas. "Thank you for a memorable evening, Mr. Aldridge." "The pleasure was entirely mine," he responded with a formal bow. "I hope to have the privilege of your company again soon." During the walk to the carriage, Nicholas strolled alongside Lily, offering his arm with a naturalness that suggested established intimacy. Guests bidding farewell in the mansion's courtyard observed with obvious interest, and Lily knew that by the following morning, all of New York would be discussing the night's events. "Mr. Aldridge," she said as he helped her into the carriage, "I fear our association may cause you social inconveniences you had not anticipated." Nicholas smiled, a genuine smile that completely transformed his habitually serious expression. "Lady Lily, allow me to assure you that I rarely do anything without carefully considering the consequences." He paused. "And may I call upon you tomorrow afternoon? I would like to continue our conversation under more private circumstances." The formal request for a visit was the next logical step in a proper courtship, yet it still surprised Lily. "It would be an honor to receive you." "Excellent. Until tomorrow, then." As the carriage drew away from Pemberton Manor, a heavy silence hung over its occupants. Margaret gazed at Lily with an indecipherable expression, while Cordelia and Beatrice could barely contain their indignation. "How dare you?" Cordelia finally burst out. "How dare you monopolize Nicholas Aldridge's attention wearing that rag?" "Cordelia," Margaret admonished, though her voice carried the same accusation. "I monopolize nothing," Lily replied calmly. "Mr. Aldridge made his own choices tonight, just as I made mine. Your choices." Beatrice laughed bitterly. "You have no right to choices. You are a bastard dependent on our family's charity." "Legally recognized bastard," Lily corrected with growing firmness. "And daughter of Lord William Fairmont, a man who was never ashamed of my existence." Margaret finally spoke, her voice low and dangerous. "Don't delude yourself, dear Lily. Men like Nicholas Aldridge may amuse themselves with temporary novelties, but they never marry outside their established social class. Tomorrow, when reality returns, you will discover that tonight was merely a fleeting fantasy." But Lily, watching the lights of New York through the carriage window, felt that something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in years, she glimpsed a future that did not solely consist of surviving her stepmother's cruelty. Nicholas Aldridge had seen something in her that commanded his genuine attention. Not pity, not temporary amusement, but true respect. And she was determined to discover where such recognition might lead her. The following morning brought an unusual stir to Fairmont Manor. Lily awoke to the sound of excited voices echoing through the corridors, and when Sarah, her personal lady's maid, entered the room carrying a tea tray, her eyes sparkled with ill-concealed excitement. "Milady," Sarah whispered, setting the tray on the table by the window. "The whole city is abuzz with talk of last night. The servants can barely contain their curiosity. They say Nicholas Aldridge has never shown such interest in a young lady before." "I fear the attention is temporary," Lily murmured, though a secret part of her heart hoped otherwise. "Men of Mr. Aldridge's standing are often interested in fleeting novelties." "Oh." "But, milady," Sarah approached, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "I overheard Lady Margaret's personal maid saying she spent the early hours writing urgent correspondence. And Cook said she ordered the best guest chambers prepared, as if expecting important visitors." Before Lily could reply, firm knocks on the door interrupted their conversation. Margaret entered without awaiting permission, her face a mask of cold determination. She wore a dark green silk gown that accentuated the severity of her expression, and her hair was arranged in an elaborate coiffure that suggested preparation for formal occasions. "Sarah." "Withdraw," she commanded without looking at the maid. When they were alone, Margaret approached the window, observing the garden with calculated attention. "I believe I must congratulate you, Lily. Your performance yesterday was impressive." "I do not understand what you refer to, stepmother." Margaret turned, her eyes narrowing. Don't feign innocence. Your pathetic display achieved precisely the reaction you sought, did it not? The powerful Nicholas Aldridge, touched by the damsel in distress. Her voice carried ill-disguised venom. But do not deceive yourself. Men like him do not marry bastards, regardless of how touching your situation. Lily rose, maintaining the dignity that had garnered so much admiration the previous night. I never sought Mr. Aldridge's attention. As you yourself well know, I would have preferred to remain at home. Perhaps, Margaret conceded, approaching with measured steps. But now that you have garnered such attention, it would be unwise to squander it. She paused meaningfully. I received a message this morning stating that Mr. Aldridge formally requested permission to visit you this afternoon. Naturally, I granted it. The revelation surprised Lily. She expected the visit, but had not imagined that Nicholas would follow such rigorous protocols, formally requesting permission from her legal guardian. However, Margaret continued, I must make my expectations clear. You will receive Mr. Aldridge with the courtesy due to a man of his standing. You will do nothing that could further compromise this family's reputation. And remember, her eyes gleamed dangerously, your continued presence in this house depends entirely on my generosity. Before Lily could respond, Cordelia burst into the room unceremoniously, her face contorted with indignation. Mama, surely you won't allow her to receive Nicholas Aldridge alone. It's inconceivable that a person of her condition would have private access to New York's most eligible man. Cordelia is right, Beatrice added, appearing behind her sister. It would be more appropriate for either Cordelia or me to serve as hostesses. After all, we are the true daughters of this house. Margaret considered the suggestion for a moment, and Lily perceived the cold calculation in her eyes. No, she said finally. Mr. Aldridge was specific in his request. He wishes to converse with Lady Lily. To interfere would be imprudent. She cast a sharp glance at her daughters. However, I will arrange for the conversation to take place in the main drawing room with the doors open and proper supervision. The following hours dragged on with torturous slowness. Lily was instructed to wear her only decent dress, a navy blue fine wool gown that had belonged to her late mother and spent the morning being meticulously prepared by Sarah. Her hair was arranged in a simple yet elegant coiffure, and she applied a small amount of the rose perfume she had carefully saved. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, the sound of horse hooves in the courtyard announced Nicholas's arrival. Lily, positioned in the main drawing room as instructed, heard the formal voices in the vestibule, the butler announcing the visitor, Margaret offering excessively cordial greetings, and finally the firm footsteps approaching. Nicholas entered the drawing room with the imposing presence that characterized all his movements. He wore an impeccable dark gray wool suit with an embroidered waistcoat and a white silk cravat. His dark hair was perfectly arranged, and he carried a bouquet of white roses that he had clearly chosen with care. Lady Lily, he said with a formal bow, offering the flowers. I trust you are well this afternoon. Very well, thank you, she replied, accepting the bouquet with slightly trembling hands. The roses were perfect, with silky petals exuding a delicate perfume. It was an expensive and significant gift, chosen to impress. Margaret positioned herself near the open doorway, obviously determined to supervise every word exchanged. Cordelia and Beatrice loitered in the corridors, occasionally passing the entrance with transparent excuses to observe the interaction. Allow me to say, Nicholas continued, settling into the armchair Lily had indicated, that you look even more charming in the light of day. A subtle blush colored Lily's cheeks. You are very kind, and thank you for the flowers. They are beautiful. They pale in comparison to your natural beauty, he replied, with a sincerity that made her lower her eyes. I trust you rested well after last night's events. Yes, though I fear our association has caused considerable social speculation. Nicholas leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. Lady Lily, may I be frank with you? She nodded, aware that Margaret was straining her ears to catch every word. I spend my life surrounded by people who say only what they imagine I wish to hear. Merchants who flatter my wealth, ladies who feign interest in my character when they clearly covet my social position, gentlemen who pretend friendship seeking commercial advantages. His eyes met hers. Last night, for the first time in years, I conversed with someone genuinely honest. Honesty can be considered a dangerous virtue in our society, Lily observed cautiously, precisely why it is so valuable. Nicholas paused, clearly choosing his words with care. Lady Lily, I am not a man who acts on impulse in important matters. I built my fortune through calculated decisions and careful analysis of opportunities. But I must confess that our conversation yesterday awakened an interest that transcends mere social considerations. Lily's heart quickened dangerously. Mr. Aldridge, allow me to finish, he interrupted gently. I know my attention may seem inexplicable, considering our different circumstances. But I grew up in poverty. I remember what it is like to be judged by outward appearance rather than inner character. I recognize genuine quality when I find it. Margaret cleared her throat loudly, reminding them of her presence. Mr. Aldridge, she interrupted, approaching with a forced smile, surely you understand that Lily, being so young and inexperienced, may not fully appreciate the honor of your attention. On the contrary, Nicholas replied without taking his eyes off Lily, I believe Lady Lily perfectly understands the value of relationships based on mutual respect rather than social convenience. It was a subtle but clear reprimand to Margaret, who bit her lips with ill-concealed irritation. May I ask, Lily continued, finding her courage, what your intentions are, Mr. Aldridge? I do not wish to appear presumptuous, but our situation is delicate. Nicholas smiled, again admiring her straightforward frankness. My intentions are entirely honorable, I assure you. I would like to get to know you better, with your permission and that of your family, of course. He directed a respectful but firm gaze at Margaret. I trust Lady Margaret will have no objections to regular visits, always within appropriate protocols. Margaret found herself in an impossible position. To deny permission would be to insult the most powerful man in New York, but to grant it could result in developments that would completely jeopardize her plans for her own daughters. Naturally, she replied through gritted teeth, Lily is free to receive appropriate visits. Excellent. Nicholas turned his attention back to Lily. Might you accompany me on a carriage ride tomorrow afternoon? With a proper chaperone, of course. I would like to show you some of the urban developments in which I have invested. It was an invitation any young lady in society would consider extremely honorable. Lily, aware that every word was being observed and analyzed, replied with measured care. That would be an honor, Mr. Aldridge. When Nicholas rose to leave, he approached and respectfully kissed her gloved hand. The gesture, though perfectly appropriate, sent a strange sensation through her arm. Until tomorrow, then, he said. I shall call for you at 2 o'clock, if that is convenient. After his departure, the drawing room fell into tense silence. Margaret watched Lily with an indecipherable expression, while Cordelia and Beatrice entered with faces contorted by frustration. Well, Margaret said finally, it appears Mr. Aldridge is determined in his attentions. We can only hope such determination does not result in undesirable consequences for this family. But Lily, still holding the bouquet of white roses, felt that for the first time in years, she glimpsed a future that could transcend the limitations others had imposed upon her life. Nicholas Aldridge saw in her something that deserved not just attention, but genuine respect, and she was determined to prove that such trust was not misplaced. The carriage ride the following afternoon unfolded beneath a clear October sky, with Nicholas personally driving the elegant vehicle through the bustling streets of New York. Lily, accompanied by a discreet chaperone whom Margaret had insisted on sending, observed with genuine interest the urban developments he described with evident passion. That plot of land, Nicholas indicated, directing her attention to a vast expanse where men were working on laying foundations, will be the largest hotel in the city within 2 years. 6 stories, 200 rooms, running water on every level. Lily admired the entrepreneurial vision he demonstrated, but more than that, she was impressed by his detailed knowledge of the workmen. Nicholas greeted many by name, inquired about their families, and it was clear he inspired genuine loyalty rather than mere fearful respect. "How do you manage to remember so many names?" she asked as they waved to a group of carpenters. "My father always said a man is worth more by what he builds than by what he inherits," Nicholas replied, driving the carriage down a tree-lined avenue. "These men are building America's future with their own hands. The least I can do is acknowledge them as individuals." His philosophy radically distinguished him from other wealthy men Lily knew, who treated laborers as interchangeable cogs in their profit-making machines. In Nicholas, there was a fascinating combination of commercial ambition and social consciousness that defied conventional expectations of industrial magnates. During the following week, Nicholas's visits to the Fairmont mansion became regular and formal, always at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, always with appropriate gifts, books of poetry, seasonal flowers, imported French confections. Their conversations revealed a sharp and curious mind, interested in literature, art, and philosophy as much as in business. Margaret observed these developments with growing unease. Initially, she had hoped Nicholas's interest would be fleeting, a temporary novelty that would soon fade. But as the visits became more frequent and formal, she had to acknowledge that his intentions were serious. "It's inconceivable," she murmured to her daughters during afternoon tea, while Lily received Nicholas in the drawing room. A man of such standing interested in a bastard. Cordelia, who had spent the week receiving polite rejections from suitors who had previously shown interest, was particularly bitter. "There must be something we don't understand. Perhaps it's just cruel amusement, to win the poor orphan's affection only to abandon her publicly." But Beatrice, watching from the window as Nicholas helped Lily alight from the carriage after another ride, shook her head reluctantly. "No, sister. See how he treats her. With genuine respect, not condescension. I fear his intentions are serious." The young lady's concern intensified when Margaret received a letter from Mrs. Pemberton, relaying the social comments circulating through the city's elegant salons. Nicholas's attention to Lily had become the dominant topic of conversation, dividing high society's opinion. Some matrons considered his interest a temporary eccentricity of a rich, bored man. Others, however, began to recognize that perhaps they had underestimated Lily Fairmont's worth. If Nicholas Aldridge saw something special in her, perhaps they should reconsider their own prejudices. During this period of growing courtship, Lily discovered aspects of Nicholas that fascinated her increasingly. He possessed an impressive private library in his Fifth Avenue mansion, knew Shakespeare's works by heart, and demonstrated a surprisingly profound understanding of the human condition. "I never imagined," she confessed during one of their conversations in the Fairmont Gardens, "that a businessman could be so cultured." Nicholas laughed, a rich sound that warmed something deep within her chest. "And I never imagined I would find a young lady who preferred discussing philosophy to gossiping about the latest Parisian fashion." They were walking through the formal gardens, followed at a respectful distance by the chaperone. When Nicholas stopped near the Rose Pavilion, his expression had turned serious, and Lily sensed that something important was coming. "Lady Lily," he began, turning to face her directly, "there is something I must confide in you, something that may alter your opinion of me." Her heart quickened. "You may speak freely." Nicholas took a deep breath, clearly struggling with some inner conflict. "My attention to you was not entirely spontaneous. I observed you before the Pemberton ball." Lily blinked, confused. "You observed me? How?" "I met your father on several business occasions. He spoke of you with such pride and affection that it piqued my curiosity. When I learned of the circumstances after his death, and how Lady Margaret treated you, I admit I felt a combination of indignation and interest." The revelation left her momentarily speechless. "So, your kindness at the ball was planned?" "The kindness was genuine," he replied quickly. "But yes, I knew who you were. I knew of the humiliation your stepmother planned. My initial intention was simply to prevent such cruelty." He paused, his eyes meeting hers. "What I did not expect was to discover that my interest would transform into something far deeper." Lily processed the information slowly. Part of her felt manipulated, as if she had been an object of charity rather than genuine affection. But another part recognized the extraordinary honesty of his confession. How many men would voluntarily admit such a thing? "Why are you telling me this?" she asked finally. "Because I cannot build a relationship based on dishonesty, even well-intentioned dishonesty. You deserve to know the whole truth before we take the next step." The implications of his words made her blush. Next step. Nicholas stepped closer, maintaining a respectful distance but narrowing the space between them. "Lady Lily, these weeks of acquaintance have confirmed something I suspected since our first conversation. You possess qualities that transcend birth or fortune: intelligence, courage, genuine integrity. These are characteristics I have sought in vain among the ladies of my own social standing." Lily's heart was beating so fiercely that she feared he might hear it. "Mr. Aldridge, allow me to finish, please. I know our situation is irregular. I know there will be social opposition, malicious comments, challenges we do not anticipate. But I also know that in you I have found something rare and precious." He extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, she placed hers in it. "I would like your permission to speak with Lady Margaret about my feelings and my future intentions." The proposal of marriage was implicit, though not directly stated. Lily felt torn between euphoria and terror. On the one hand, Nicholas offered escape from Margaret's tyranny, a respectable social position, and above all, genuine affection. On the other, she feared that such happiness was impossible for someone in her position. "What if Lady Margaret refuses your proposal?" she asked in an almost inaudible voice. A determined smile crossed Nicholas's face. "Lady Margaret is too intelligent to refuse an alliance that would benefit the entire Fairmont family. But even if she were to refuse, you will turn 21 in a few months, at which point you will be legally able to make your own choices. The possibility of real independence, of a life beyond Margaret's control, was as tempting as it was terrifying. I need time to consider, naturally. I would expect nothing less from you." Nicholas respectfully kissed her gloved hand. "But know, Lady Lily, that my feelings are genuine and profound. What began as admiration for your courage has transformed into something I have never before experienced." That night, Lily remained awake until late, watching the moon through her bedroom window. Nicholas's confession had altered her perception of recent events, but it had not lessened the feelings growing in her heart. If anything, his honesty about his initial motivations had increased her respect for him. How many men would have admitted such a thing? Most would have kept it secret, allowing her to believe a romanticized version of events. But Nicholas had chosen the uncomfortable truth over convenient illusion, another proof of his exceptional character. The following morning, Margaret entered her room with a speculative expression. "Lily, I need to speak with you about Mr. Aldridge." "Yes, stepmother?" "His visits have become remarkably regular, and last night I received interesting information regarding his intentions." Margaret moved towards the window, observing the gardens where so many important conversations had taken place. "Apparently he made inquiries about your legal age and other matters relevant to matrimonial engagements." Lily maintained a neutral expression, though her heart pounded. "I understand. I must ask directly. Have you encouraged such expectations?" It was a crucial moment. Lily could deny it, protect herself from Margaret's potential wrath, or take a stand that could alter the balance of power in the house forever. "Mr. Aldridge is an honorable gentleman who has treated me with respect and kindness," she replied carefully. "If he has chosen to develop deeper sentiments, I cannot be held responsible for such a development." Margaret studied her for a long moment. "Very well. When he requests a formal audience, I shall be prepared to receive him." Her voice carried a resignation Lily had never heard before. After all, it would be imprudent to refuse a proposal that would considerably elevate this family's social standing. When Margaret left, Lily understood that she had crossed a threshold. There was no turning back. Nicholas would make his formal proposal, Margaret would accept it for convenience, and her life would change forever. The question that remained was whether she was prepared for such a transformation, and whether the growing love she felt for Nicholas would be enough to face the challenges that would certainly come. Nicholas arrived at the Fairmont mansion on a particularly cold November morning, carrying not only the usual flowers but also a determination that Lily could sense the moment he alighted from the carriage. His movements possessed a calculated formality, and when he respectfully kissed her hand in the drawing room, his eyes held an intensity that made her heart quicken. "Lady Lily," he said with a carefully controlled voice, "I trust you are well this morning. There is a matter of utmost importance that I need to discuss with your family." Margaret, who had been observing from the drawing-room entrance with ill-disguised curiosity, approached with measured steps. During the past weeks, she had mentally prepared for this moment, recognizing that a formal proposal from Nicholas would be impossible to refuse without devastating social consequences. "Mr. Aldridge," she greeted with exaggerated courtesy, "what a pleasure to receive you. I believe you wish to speak with me on a particular matter." "Precisely, Lady Margaret. If we could converse in private." His gaze included Lily. "With Lady Lily's presence, of course, as the matter directly concerns her." Lily's heart beat with an irregular force as they proceeded to Margaret's private study, a formal room decorated with ancestral portraits and mahogany furniture that lent suitable solemnity for important discussions. Nicholas waited for both of them to be seated before taking a position near the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back in a posture that revealed subtle nervousness but unshakable determination. "Lady Margaret," he began with impeccable formality, "I come today to formally request Lady Lily's hand in marriage." Although she expected the declaration, hearing it pronounced with such solemnity made Lily feel a dizzying mix of euphoria and terror. Was it truly possible that her life could change so drastically, that she could escape Margaret's subtle but constant tyranny and find true happiness? Margaret, in turn, played the role of responsible guardian with calculated perfection. "Mr. Aldridge, surely you understand that such a decision requires careful consideration. Lily is young and her particular position necessitates certain assurances regarding your intentions." "I perfectly understand your concerns," Nicholas replied with a patience that demonstrated his preparation for such an objection. "Allow me to be absolutely clear about my intentions and expectations." He directed a respectful but firm gaze at Lily. "I love Lady Lily deeply and genuinely. I do not seek a marriage of convenience or social advantage. I desire a partner for life, someone who shares not only my name and fortune, but my values and aspirations." The direct declaration made Lily blush intensely, but it also awakened a sense of security she had never experienced. There was absolute certainty in Nicholas's voice, a conviction that transcended mere social gallantry. Margaret leaned forward slightly, adopting the tone of an experienced negotiator she employed in commercial matters. "Your intentions are honorable, no doubt, but you must understand that Lily does not possess a significant dowry. In truth, her financial situation is modest." "Lady Margaret," Nicholas interrupted with growing firmness, "my fortune is more than sufficient for both of us. I do not seek financial advantage in this union. I seek genuine happiness, something I have found to be surprisingly rare in our society. And as for the matter of her origin?" Margaret's question carried subtle venom. "Surely your business associates and social connections will comment on a marriage to a recognized daughter." Lily felt a familiar pang of humiliation. But before she could reply, Nicholas stepped forward, his eyes flashing with controlled indignation. "Lady Margaret, I must remind you that Lady Lily is the legally recognized daughter of Lord William Fairmont, a man whose reputation for integrity was known throughout New York. Her maternal lineage is also impeccable. The Beaumont family possesses aristocratic connections dating back to pre-revolutionary France." His voice acquired an icy tone. "Anyone who questions the suitability of my fiancée will quickly discover that I have little patience for unfounded prejudices." The passionate defense touched Lily deeply. For the first time in her life, someone not only accepted her irregular position, but was willing to defend her publicly against social criticism. Margaret, realizing she had underestimated Nicholas's determination, changed tactics. "Naturally, we do not question Lily's honor. We merely wish to ensure that both of you understand the challenges you will face. Marriages that defy social conventions often encounter unforeseen obstacles. All marriages face challenges," Nicholas replied. "The difference lies in facing them united, or allowing external pressures to destroy something precious." He turned to Lily, extending his hand. "The crucial question is not whether there will be difficulties, but whether Lady Lily believes our mutual affection is strong enough to overcome them. Lily looked at the outstretched hand, understanding that to accept meant far more than agreeing to a marriage. It meant choosing a completely different future, abandoning familiar and known security, even if it was unpleasant, for something uncertain but potentially wonderful. "Mr. Aldridge," she said with a voice that gradually gained firmness, "your words honor me deeply, but I must ask a question that may seem improper." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Do you truly love me, or do you feel compassion for my situation?" The question surprised him with its directness, but his smile was immediate and warm. "Lady Lily, compassion might motivate temporary kindness or financial assistance. It would never motivate a man to commit his entire future to a permanent union." He stepped closer, keeping his hand extended. "What I feel for you transcends any emotion I have ever experienced. It is admiration for your courage, fascination with your intelligence, contentment in your company, and yes, deep and lasting love." Lily felt tears prick her eyes. For years she had wondered if anyone could genuinely love her, or if she would always be an object of pity or convenience. The absolute sincerity in Nicholas's voice dispelled such doubts definitively. With a movement that sealed her fate, she placed her hand in his. "Then I accept your proposal with gratitude and with corresponding love." Margaret observed the exchange with conflicting feelings. On the one hand, she definitively lost control over Lily. On the other, she gained a family connection to the most powerful man in New York, something that would considerably elevate her own daughter's social status. "Very well," she said with pragmatic resignation. "If both of you are determined on this course, I see no reason to impose objections." Her voice acquired a businesslike tone. "Naturally, we expect the engagement to be announced appropriately, and the wedding to be celebrated with the dignity due to both families." Nicholas nodded respectfully. "Certainly. I suggest a formal engagement of 3 months, allowing adequate time for preparations and necessary social adjustments. The wedding could take place in early spring, perhaps at St. Patrick's Church." "St. Patrick's Church?" Margaret could not conceal her surprise. It was the most prestigious venue in New York for aristocratic ceremonies. "Lily deserves a celebration that adequately reflects her worth," Nicholas replied with a simplicity that carried steely determination. "Our union will be celebrated publicly, with pride, not as something to be minimized or hidden." In the days following the formal engagement, the news spread through New York's high society like wildfire. Reactions varied dramatically. Some families expressed genuine shock at Nicholas's choice, while others quickly re-evaluated their stance towards the Fairmonts, recognizing the advantages of maintaining cordial relations with the future wife of the city's wealthiest man. Lily found herself at the center of social attention she had never experienced. Invitations for teas, dinners, and cultural events arrived daily at the Fairmont mansion. Ladies who had previously ignored her completely now vied for her attention, hoping to secure privileged access to Nicholas through his future wife. The most dramatic transformation, however, occurred within the house itself. Margaret, recognizing the new reality, completely altered her treatment of Lily. The young woman who for years had been treated as an unwanted dependent suddenly became the most valuable family connection. "Lily, my dear," Margaret said one morning, entering the room with a smile that attempted to appear genuine, "we need to discuss your trousseau. Naturally, as Mr. Aldridge's future wife, you will require an entirely new wardrobe. I thought we might visit Madame Dubois this afternoon." Madame Dubois was the most exclusive and expensive dressmaker in New York, patronized only by the most established elite. Margaret's suggestion clearly revealed her understanding of Lily's new position in the family hierarchy. Cordelia and Beatrice, initially devastated by their half-sister's sudden elevation, gradually realized the potential advantages of the situation. Having Nicholas Aldridge as a brother-in-law would open previously inaccessible social doors, and his wealth would ensure that they, too, would indirectly benefit from the union. "Lily," Cordelia approached one afternoon, with a forced humility that contrasted drastically with her usual arrogance, "I hope we can restart our relationship. After all, we are sisters, and your happiness is important to the whole family." Lily, although perfectly understanding the motivations behind the change in attitude, chose to respond with grace. Years of cruel treatment had taught her the value of dignity, and she did not wish to perpetuate cycles of resentment. Of course, Cordelia. The past is the past. I hope we can be true sisters from now on. Meanwhile, Nicholas dedicated himself to the wedding preparations with meticulous attention to detail. He commissioned jewelry befitting his future wife's position, arranged the purchase of an even grander mansion on Fifth Avenue, and began introducing Lily to his most influential business and social circles. I wish you to understand, he explained during one of their evening strolls, that as my wife, you will have significant social responsibilities. You will be expected to preside over charitable events, to receive visiting dignitaries, to adequately represent our family on public occasions. Lily considered the expectations with seriousness. I confess such responsibilities intimidate me. My social experience has been limited. You will learn naturally, Nicholas assured her with confidence. Furthermore, your authenticity will be a refreshing contrast to the artificiality that characterizes many ladies of our social standing. As the wedding date approached, Lily felt torn between overwhelming gratitude and growing anxiety. Her life was about to change so drastically that sometimes she felt dizzy contemplating the implications. But whenever such doubts assailed her, she only needed to look at Nicholas, at the sincerity in his eyes, the kindness in his actions, the constant respect he showed, to remind herself that she had found something genuinely precious. The love between them grew daily, nourished by the continuous discovery of unexpected compatibilities and the growing certainty that they had found in each other not only romantic affection, but a true life partnership. The wedding morning dawned clear and golden, as if nature itself wished to bless the union that all of New York awaited with feverish curiosity. Lily awoke before sunrise, unable to sleep due to the dizzying mix of anticipation and nervousness that had taken hold of her heart. In a few hours, she would forever cease to be Lady Lily Fairmont, the illegitimate daughter tolerated by Charity to become Mrs. Nicholas Aldridge, wife of the most powerful man on the East Coast. Sarah entered the room carrying a tray with aromatic tea and delicate toast, her eyes shining with ill-suppressed emotion. "Milady," she whispered, setting the tray on the table near the window. "It's the big day." All the staff are in a flutter. They have never seen so many flowers arrive for a single person. By the window, Lily could see the Fairmont mansion gardens transformed by the abundance of floral arrangements sent by admirers. Nicholas's business associates and members of society eager to demonstrate support for the union. White roses, golden lilies, and rare orchids created a spectacle of colors and perfumes that rivaled European royal gardens. Margaret appeared at the door, wearing a mauve silk dress that had cost a small fortune and expressing a happiness that, though calculated, seemed genuine. The complete transformation in her treatment of Lily over the past few months had been remarkable. The young woman she once mistreated was now treated like a family. "Treasure, dear Lily," she said in a mellifluous voice, "it's time for us to get ready. Madame Dubois awaits in the blue salon with her assistants, and the dress is even more magnificent than we imagined." The wedding dress was a masterpiece of French craftsmanship, personally commissioned by Nicholas from Paris. Made of ivory silk with intricate silver thread embroidery, it featured an elegant train adorned with tiny pearls that caught the light like dewdrops. The bodice, fitted to perfection, enhanced Lily's delicate figure, while the long lace sleeves ended in pearl cuffs that complemented the diamond necklace, Nicholas's wedding gift. As Madame Dubois and her assistants helped Lily dress, Cordelia and Beatrice watched with genuine admiration mixed with residual envy. Their own attire for the ceremony, though elegant, paled in comparison to the splendor of the bride's gown. "Lily," Cordelia murmured, approaching hesitantly, "I must admit you look stunning. Nicholas is a fortunate man." It was the first sincere compliment Lily had ever received from either of her half-sisters. The remark touched her deeply, suggesting that perhaps family relationships could truly be rebuilt on healthier foundations. "Thank you, Cordelia. Your words mean a great deal to me." When her preparations were complete, Lily observed herself in the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the elegant figure that gazed back. The dress transformed her into a vision of aristocratic grace, but more than that, there was a new light in her eyes, the luminosity of someone who had found not only love, but genuine purpose in life. St. Patrick's Church had been decorated with a magnificence that rivaled European royal ceremonies. Hundreds of candles created a golden and solemn atmosphere, while elaborate floral arrangements adorned each side altar. The organ played Bach pieces with appropriate reverence for the most anticipated occasion of the social season. New York's elite occupied the church pews in formal attire that represented considerable fortunes. Magistrates, bankers, industrialists, and established aristocratic families watched with poorly disguised curiosity the ceremony that united two traditionally separate social worlds. Nicholas awaited at the altar with impeccable posture, wearing a perfectly tailored black wool tailcoat, a golden brocade waistcoat, and a white silk cravat fastened with a diamond pin. His dark hair was precisely arranged, and his gloved hands firmly held his silk top hat. But it was his expression that most impressed, a mixture of reverence, anticipation, and deep love that touched even the most cynical observers. When the church doors opened and Lily appeared on the arm of Lord Pemberton, who had kindly offered to escort her to the altar in the absence of her late father, a murmur of admiration swept through the congregation. She walked with perfect grace, head held high and eyes fixed on Nicholas, radiating a natural dignity that silenced any residual criticism about her irregular background. The bridal march echoed majestically through the church's Gothic arches as Lily slowly advanced down the central aisle. With each step, she felt the weight of curious glances, but also noticed growing approval on the guests' faces. Her natural beauty, enhanced by the magnificent gown and evident happiness, won over even those who had arrived prepared to criticize. Nicholas watched her approach with emotion he could barely contain. During the months of courtship, he had grown not only in love, but in admiration for her extraordinary courage, her sharp intelligence, and her ability to maintain dignity under the most challenging circumstances. Now seeing her approach dressed like a princess, yet retaining the authenticity that had first captured his attention, he knew with absolute certainty that he had made the wisest decision of his life. When Lord Pemberton placed Lily's hand in Nicholas's, the symbolism of the moment did not go unnoticed by anyone. The young woman who, months earlier, had been publicly humiliated at the ball was now given in marriage to the most desirable man in New York. A transformation that seemed straight out of a fairy tale. Reverend Dr. Morrison, a respected patriarch of high society, conducted the ceremony with appropriate solemnity. His words about matrimony, commitment, and the union of souls echoed through the church arches, conferring sacred gravity upon the moment. When it was time for the vows, Nicholas turned to face Lily directly, his words laden with genuine emotion. "Lady Lily," he said in a clear voice that reached every corner of the church, "I promise to love you, protect you, and honor you every day of my life. I promise to be not only your husband, but your true partner in all the joys and challenges that the future may bring. You have brought light and purpose to my existence, and I dedicate my entire life to ensuring your happiness." Lily, her voice starting tremulously but gaining increasing firmness, replied, "Nicholas, I promise to love you with all the sincerity of my heart. I promise to support you in all your endeavors, share your dreams, and face any adversity we may encounter by your side. You have taught me that I am worthy of true love, and I will dedicate my life to being the wife you deserve." As Nicholas slid the diamond-ornamented gold ring onto Lily's finger, and she did the same with his ring, the symbol of eternal union was witnessed by all of New York's elite. It was a moment of not only personal but social triumph, proof that genuine character could transcend established prejudices. The kiss that sealed their union was chaste, but laden with promise and tenderness. When they separated and turned to face the congregation as husband and wife, the explosion of applause was spontaneous and warm. Even those who had arrived skeptical were touched by the evident authenticity of their mutual love. Their exit from the church was triumphant. Rose petals rained down on the couple as they walked down the central aisle. now as Mr. and Mrs. Aldridge. Lily held Nicholas's arm firmly, feeling a mixture of overwhelming gratitude and iron determination to prove herself worthy of the trust he had placed in her. The reception at Aldridge Mansion was a spectacle of elegance and abundance. Gilded salons accommodated hundreds of guests, while a full orchestra played waltzes and quadrilles in the main ballroom. Tables laden with delicacies imported from Europe offered culinary delights that rivaled royal banquets. Lily, now officially the hostess of one of New York's most important mansions, circulated among the guests with increasing grace. She received compliments and felicitations from people who, months earlier, had completely ignored her, but she responded to each with a sincerity that gradually won genuine respect instead of mere social courtesy. Mrs. Aldridge, Mrs. Pemberton, one of society's most influential matrons, approached. "I must confess your transformation has been extraordinary. Nicholas chose wisely. You possess a natural elegance that cannot be taught." During their first waltz as husband and wife, Nicholas whispered in Lily's ear, "Do you have any idea how much I love you?" "How proud I am to call you my wife!" Lily smiled, feeling a happiness so complete that she feared waking to find it was all a wonderful dream. "I still can barely believe this is real. Only a few months ago I believed I would never find true happiness. This is just the beginning, my dear wife. Together, we will build an extraordinary life based on the true love we have found in each other." As they danced, observed by all of New York's elite, both knew they had achieved something rare and precious. Not just romantic love, but genuine partnership, mutual respect, and the promise of a future built on solid foundations of true affection and admiration. As the night progressed and the guests gradually took their leave, Nicholas and Lily remained in the mansion garden, watching the stars and contemplating the miracle of their union. From a publicly humiliated illegitimate daughter to the wife of America's most powerful man, the transformation seemed impossible, but it had happened through a combination of extraordinary courage and true love. "Promise me something," Nicholas asked, gently holding her gloved hands. "Anything. Promise me you will never doubt your own worth again. You are extraordinary, Lily Aldridge, and I want the whole world to recognize that truth." Lily smiled, finally understanding that she had found not just a husband, but someone who saw possibilities in her that she herself had never imagined. "I promise," she whispered, "as long as you promise to keep loving me as I am." "Forever," he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss that officially inaugurated their life as a couple. A life that had begun with humiliation, transformed into triumph by the transformative power of true love.